process. We should promote accountability for greater confidence among the non-profit organizations across the donor community, the financial institutions, and the general public, that funds and services reach the intended legitimate beneficiaries.
Kenya has achieved milestones in the fight against terrorism and violent extremism. With the Global Terrorism Index impact score for Kenya decreasing from a high in 2023 to a medium in 2024. Our reports indicated that from January 2024 to November 2020, from January 2022 to November 2024, our officers have thwarted 47 terrorist attacks across the country. During the period, several terrorists have been neutralized. The government has also pushed for 11 successful convictions.
Tukisalia huko ni kwamba mkuu wa mawaziri Musalia Mudavadi amefichua kwamba wanawake 100 waliuawa kati ya Agosti na Novemba mwaka 2024. Mudavadi ambaye pia ni kaimu waziri wa usalama wa ndani amesema mauaji ya wanawake ni tatizo kubwa linalokumba sekta ya usalama nchini. Mudavadi vile vile ameeleza kuwa Kenya imerekodi jumla ya visa 7107 vya ukatili wa kijinsia kati ya Septemba mwaka jana na mwezi huu.
Mwaka wa 2024 umekuwa mtihani mkubwa kwa usalama wa Kenya, kuanzia mauaji ya wanawake, utekaji nyara, wizi wa mifugo hadi ukatili wa polisi wakati wa maandamano ya Gen Z. Tunapokaribia mwisho wa mwaka, Wizara ya Usalama wa Ndani imetoa mustakabali wa hali ya usalama nchini na kusisitiza juhudi za serikali za kuhakikisha kila Mkenya yuko salama. Kaimu Waziri wa Usalama wa Ndani Musalia Mudavadi ameangazia matukio ya mwaka huu ikiwemo mauaji ya wanawake yaliyoshuhudiwa. Mudavadi amesema wanawake 100 waliuawa kati ya Agosti na Novemba mwaka huu na kusema tatizo hilo limekuwa changamoto ya mara kwa mara na serikali inafanya juhudi za kulitatua.
The Inspector General of Police has formed a specialized missing persons unit domiciled at the DCI homicide unit to deal with cases of femicide. In addition, His Excellency the President William Ruto on Tuesday 17th of December 2024, that is earlier this week, directed the formation of a presidential working group on femicide. The team, to be gazetted soon, is expected to deliver actionable proposals and address femicide issues within 90 days of its creation so that there can be a structured approach based on their recommendation.
Mudavadi amepuzilia mbali madai ya kuongezeka kwa utekaji nyara, akisema mitandao ya kijamii imetumiwa kusambaza propaganda. Ameeleza kwamba watu wote walikamatwa kwa mujibu wa sheria na sasa anawaomba Wakenya watumie mitandao ya kijamii kwa uwajibikaji. Hata hivyo, kauli zake zinatiliwa shaka kutokana na video zinazoonyesha watu wakikamatwa na magari yanayotumika ni yale yasiyokuwa na ufadhili, huku ikiwa vigumu kuwatambua maafisa husika.
In the recent past, social media has been misused to perpetuate a narrative that certain lawful arrests were abductions, when in fact those arrested are either awaiting trial or have been released after the necessary legal procedures. Some of the people allegedly kidnapped were safely reunited with their families, for instance, the 2 Kitengela brothers and activists. All arrests will be conducted within the bounds of the law and will remain committed to upholding the principles of justice and due process. Any officer found contravening these principles will be held accountable.
Kuhusu wizi wa mifugo unaoendelea kaskazini mwa nchi, Mudavadi amesema juhudi za serikali zimepunguza uhalifu huo kwa 62%. Hata hivyo, Ameongeza kuwa uharibifu wa mali na uhalifu mwingine unaongezeka katika maeneo tofauti nchini.
14,598 cows were recovered. Unfortunately, 179 civilians were killed and 4 officers lost their lives.
Innocent Ogaro, runinga ya K24.
Wazazi na walimu wameeleza wasiwasi kuhusu gharama za kutekeleza mtaala wa CBC pamoja na ukosefu wa vitabu vipya vilivyotathminiwa hasa kwa walio katika gredi ya 5 hadi gredi ya 8. Hata hivyo, Wizara ya Elimu imethibitisha kwamba asilimia 80 ya vitabu vimewasilishwa kupitia mgao wa shilingi bilioni 47 kwa wachapishaji vitabu. Vilevile ameutetea ushirikiano na wazazi kuhusu gharama ya CBC na kusema kwamba kazi za ziada hazihitaji uchapishaji wa aina yoyote, ila maelezo hayo ni tofauti na hali halisi. Huyu hapa Harris Chimea.
Wazazi na walimu wamezidi kulalamika kuhusu gharama za kutekeleza mfumo mpya wa elimu wa CBC. Wengi wanalalamika ukosefu wa vitabu hasa kwa wanafunzi walio katika gredi ya 5 hadi ya 8.
I've realized we don't have books that have been approved for grade 5 to 8. We only have grade 1, PP1 to grade 4 and then grade 9. So what are we going to use as teachers to facilitate learning in grade 5 to 8?
Hata hivyo, Wizara ya Elimu imesisitiza kuwa asilimia 80 ya vitabu vinavyohitajika kwa CBC vimewasilishwa kupitia mgao wa shilingi bilioni 47 kwa wachapishaji vitabu na kuthibitisha kuwa ifikapo Januari vitabu vyote vitapatikana madukani.
As we speak today, 80% of grade 9 books have already been distributed, and as we talk today, 47 billion has been paid to publishers. And the chairman of the Publishers Association is here. They will confirm that for the books that they have delivered, which we have confirmed have reached school, we have made all the payment.
Wadau wa elimu pia wamesema wazazi hawatatarajiwa kuchapisha kazi za ziada, ilhali wazazi hulazimika kuchapisha kazi hizo na kufanya wengi walalamike ongezeko la gharama ya elimu.
We have no place in the curriculum designs that will ask a parent to print anything.
Isitoshe, shule za JSS zina uhaba wa jumla wa walimu 72,422. Hata hivyo, tume ya kuajiri walimu TSC inasema kwamba ifikapo Januari, walimu watarajali 20,000 watafunza wanafunzi wa JSS, huku wengine 39,550 kati ya walimu 46,000 wakiajiriwa kufunza JSS. Kwa sasa, Wizara ya Elimu imesema kuwa ujenzi wa madarasa 14,000 umekamilika, huku 3,800 yakiwa bado yanajengwa. Wizara imeagiza wakuu wa shule kutumia kiwango kidogo cha ufadhili wa serikali kununua madawati.
We've agreed that the capitation for junior school, if possible, should be done before the opening of the schools on the 6th of January 2025.
Ila kwa wengi, pasipo mgao wa rasilimali kwa uwazi na wakati ufaao na walimu wa kutosha wenye ujuzi, basi ahadi kuhusu CBC huenda zisitimie. Harriet Chimea, K24.
Waziri wa Ardhi Alice Wahome ametoa amri kwa raia wa kigeni wenye hati miliki za umiliki huru wa ardhi wazirudishe mara moja, akidai hawakuzipata kihalali. Kulingana na Waziri Wahome, hakuna raia wa kigeni anayehitaji kuwa na hati miliki hiyo, kwani ni kinyume cha sheria na katiba. Sasa anaitaka wizara isifanye miamala yoyote kwa hati miliki hiyo katika usajili wa ardhi. Waziri anasema kwamba baada ya raia wa kigeni kurudisha hati hizo, watapewa hati miliki ya ukodishaji ardhi kwa muda wa miaka 99 kama ilivyoainishwa katika katiba ya Kenya mwaka 2010.
Kuna wale ambaye ni marafiki wetu wamekaa hapa na sisi, na ni watu ambaye we can use English tuseme ni foreigners, na hatuna vita na wao, si ndio? Lakini kuna watu waliwapeleka vibaya, wakawapatia titles ambaye ni freehold. huwezi kama we sio Mkenya kuwa na freehold title. Kwa hivyo ninatangaza nikiwa hapa Maridi, Mheshimiwa Gavana, those titles should not be transacted, should not be used in our land registries. Hakuna transaction inatakiwa kufanyika na foreigner kama anatumia freehold title. You cannot, kwa sababu katiba yetu ya 2010 inapea ruhusa wa Kenya peke yao kuwa na hatimiliki za freehold. Tenure of leasehold ndio tunapea wale wageni. Wageni wako na ile kiwango ni ya leasehold 99 years and below.
Viongozi wa upinzani wamezidi kujitokeza na kuonyesha nia yao ya kumuunga mkono aliyekuwa naibu rais Rigathi Gachagua katika azma yake ya kutimua Kenya Kwanza uongozini katika uchaguzi ujao. Wakizungumza mjini Embo, viongozi hao wakiongozwa na kinara wa Wiper Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa wa DAP-K, Jeremiah Kioni wa Jubilee na aliyekuwa gavana wa Kiambu Ferdinand Waititu wamefichua kuwa watafanya kazi pamoja. Aidha, wameendelea kuishtumu serikali kuhusu mpango wa chanjo ya mifugo.
Tumechoka na siasa ya uongo. Na pia tutakuwa tukishikamana na ndugu yetu Uhuru Kenyatta ambaye alipokuja hapa mlimpokea kwa shangwe kabisa. Si namna hiyo? Hata hapa Uhuru alikuja coordination akaona maajabu ya watu wa Embu.
Leo tuwasema aliyekuwa naibu wa rais Gachagua ameungana na upinzani, Kalonzo, Wamalwa na hii team. Tunaambia Ruto tsunami inakuja. Haki ya Mungu asubuhi na mapema. Ruto pia box wapi? Zakayo ashuke asishuke?
Mambo ya Ruto kwenda nyumbani, Wakenya wote kila pembe ya Kenya hii wamekubali. Sisi wakaaji wa mlima pande hii tunasema ya kwamba kwa ile serikali ambayo inakuja tunataka one man, one vote, one sharing.
Moja kwa moja hivi sasa turejee katika eneo la Karen hapa Nairobi, katika makao makuu ya naibu rais Kithure Kindiki. Kumbuka kuna mahojiano ya moja kwa moja muda mchache unaokuja na vyombo vya habari tofauti nchini Kenya. Kama unavyoona, naibu rais Kithure Kindiki tayari ameshawasili kwenye kikao hicho pamoja na wanahabari ambao wametwekwa jukumu la kumuuliza maswali kadhaa. Kwanza kuhusiana na maswali ya vifo, mauaji na rabsha, vifo vilivyotokana na maandamano ya Gen Z ambayo yalishuhudiwa miezi kadhaa iliyopita, na vile vile kuhusiana na wadhifa wake mpya. Kumbuka naibu rais baada ya kutimuliwa kwa aliyekuwa naibu rais Rigathi Gachagua. Kwa hiyo maswali miongoni tu maswali ambayo ataulizwa kwenye kikao hicho, mahojiano ya moja kwa moja na wanahabari kutoka vyombo vya habari tofauti nchini Kenya. Runinga ya K24 inawakilishwa na mwanahabari mwenza Joel Chacha ambaye yuko hapo. Moja kwa moja tuelekee huko.
Kithure Kindiki, wadhifa uliotanguliwa na miaka miwili ya usimamizi tata kwenye Wizara ya Usalama na Masuala ya Ndani ya nchi. Hii leo kwenye mkao wake wa kwanza kama naibu rais atakuwa anawaelezea Wakenya kuhusu wadhifa wake mpya pamoja na agenda za serikali. Mimi ni Mashirima Kapombe kutoka runinga ya Citizen, lakini niko na wenzangu kutoka mashirika mbalimbali ya habari.
My name is Joel Chacha from K24 TV.
My name is Michelle Ngele Odhiambo from NTV.
And I am John Jacob Kuria from the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation.
I am Ashley Mazuri from KTN.
Good evening, I'm George Maringa from Cape Media Limited, TV47.
Karibu Professor, na asante sana kwa muda wako. This interview will be conducted in both English and Kiswahili, so feel free to express yourself in the language that you feel most comfortable. Now let's start with the elephant in the room. When we publicized this interview, some of the reactions that we received were quite hostile on your person. And I'll read some of those responses that we got. One said, cancel that interview. Another one said, not worth my time. Another one called you a butcher and a murderer. Another said, who killed protesters under his leadership? Now, why would this interview generate so much hostility on your person? And why do you think Kenyans feel tonight whatever you have to say is not of value to them?
First, I appreciate and thank you for having me on this broadcast. It is, maybe I'll start by saying that not everyone is saying what you read out. There are others who are saying other things. But that is still okay, because it is the right of the people of Kenya to express themselves on what they think about their leaders, especially political leaders. And therefore, mine is to confirm that because I've been in public life for a while, in various capacities, I have endeavored to do my best to my country, and I have no regret for anything. Maybe lessons learned, which is a common human thing, that perhaps there are things I've picked along the way. But in terms of my public duty and commitment to our national interest, I have been extremely clear on what is expected of me in the various roles that I have played in this country.
As Interior CS, where Kenyans feel that you oversaw massive brutality on Kenyans who are expressing themselves when they felt that their leaders were not representing them in the way that they should. Do you take personal responsibility for the murder of 60 people, according to the KNCHR?
Well, the violent protest that took place early this year, and even earlier on in 2023, unfortunately led to loss of lives. Some of those lives were lost in various ways, including through police action. I have no reason to take responsibility for anything, because the space of violence and encounter with law enforcement is a space which is defined by law. And the role of the Minister for Interior is defined in the Constitution, Article 245, on what that role is. That role includes providing policy guidance to the organs of internal security. The role of police operations are protected through the mandate of independent command of the Inspector General, and therefore police operations, especially in engaging protesters or people who are seen as breaching the peace, is the province for the independent command of the National Inspector General of the National Police Service. As far as I'm concerned, the 2 years I have been the country's Interior Minister, every single day of them, when I woke up to do my work, to make sure that the security organs of our country that protect our country from threats, security threats, perform their work, and should they require any policy guidance, that guidance is provided. And that's all what I can say for now.
So you're saying tonight that you have no say whatsoever when the police misbehave?
The Interior Minister has no role in police operations, according to Article 245.
So you have no say whatsoever when they go wrong as a professor of law?
I have a say, and I said it. And the say is this, that police officers are allowed to use force, including lethal force, in exceptional circumstances. Should any officer violate the strict parameters of those circumstances, they are accountable under the law. And we say it many times, not once, not even in the context of the protests alone, but also in the context of the fight against terror and the fight against banditry and other organized crime. That any police officer who uses their firearm lawfully within the Constitution, including lethal force, has legal protection. But so any of them who exceeds the parameters of the Constitution is on their own, and the organs of accountability is not the Interior Minister. It is the agencies such as IPOA and the DPP and the rest.
So who shot at David Chege at the precincts of Parliament and Erickson Chalo Mutisia? These two young men were not armed. Would you say that use of live ammunition was reasonable?
I think the matter of the violence that occurred in Parliament and the unfortunate loss of life is a matter that which is actively being investigated by IPOA and other agencies. So it will be preemptive for me to tell you who shot the two Kenyans who unfortunately, according to the records, lost their lives in that context.
So how far are the investigations? You're the DP now. You may have moved on to a different role, but it's definitely senior to...
I'm aware that there are two ways of conducting investigations. One is through the internal affairs unit of the police. But our policy in the last 2 years, while we were in that docket, we discouraged the internal affairs unit of the police from being the ones to investigate their colleagues because it raises issues of conflict of interest and perhaps perceptions of bias. So we encourage the Independent Police Oversight Authority to be the one to do the investigations. The report I had when I left the ministry is that they had made some good progress. They reported to me they had some 6 files which are ready from the context of the riots and the violence around that time. But there has been a transition in the leadership of IPOA right now. A new commission has just been put in place. And the work of IPOA is led by commissioners. It's not led by the Secretariat. So the delay in the last 2-3 months could be associated to the leadership transition by IPOA.
Ashley and George, you have follow-ups. Ashley?
All right, Your Excellency, you have made a name for yourself as a defender of human rights. Are you proud about the events that occurred in June this year? I mean, this led to deaths of young, innocent Kenyans. Where does this sit as, to you, the professor of human rights, not as the deputy president, but as the professor of human rights?
Any Kenyan, not to mention a professor of law, who would be proud by what happened in our country, June, July, from whatever angle, would be inappropriately doing so. Because those events were extremely painful to the country. They were unnecessary, if I may say so, because there is a way of processing democratic encounters, and there's a way in which the balances between the protection of public safety and the expression of individual rights and freedoms must help us navigate peaceful and orderly society. So to answer your question, I wouldn't be proud at all.
Mr. Deputy President, then what did you have to say to families who are still looking for their loved ones? For instance, on X, we were tagged and someone said, I always communicate with Peter Masharia's mom. Imagine she wakes up every day to go to the mortuary. Peter Masharia went missing on the 25th of June. Tonight, what do you tell those families that are still looking for their loved ones?
To the families who lost their loved ones or whose loved ones are still missing, I would say that it's unfortunate that this country went through what it went through in June, July. I hope that our country has learned the lessons and we will not get there again, because losing a loved one, having a loved one missing for months, almost half a year, even for a day, is extremely painful. And therefore, as I said when I responded to this matter earlier on, maybe not on this forum, it is very unfortunate, and we, including myself, regret that our country went that direction and hope that we will not get there again.
Yet when they look at you, Professor, they say you are the face of, disappearances, abductions, deaths and murders on young people in this country. Do you feel that you're struggling to shake off that tag?
Not at all, because it is not true. So I don't struggle at all.
So then,
Your Excellency, the families that were bereaved pleaded with the government of the day to help them with burial expenses. Did that happen? How much was spent? And there was a committal to compensate families that lost their beloved ones. What's the status of that, Deputy President?
To the best of my knowledge, a number of families were given modest ex gratia support on a request basis and on a basis of confidentiality, because what the state does in a situation like that, when there is distress in the country, citizens are facing distress, we go out of our way for ways of supporting. But normally that support is support which, first of all, is not budgeted for, so we have to look for ways of, within the security budget, absorbing some of those costs. And if I recall well, a number of families were supported on an ex gratia basis. The question of compensation is a little more complex and will require guidance, because no law would allow expenditure on compensation for events similar to what we had. I am aware, even in more extreme cases like terrorist-related deaths and injury, it is anticipated that victims of terrorist crimes and other violent acts would be compensated. And I think when we left the ministry, we were trying to develop regulations on the operationalization of Section 49 of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. And I think that can form a basis of thinking of how else or in which other circumstances perhaps extreme cases of loss and injury could be compensated. So that's a discussion we are having, and I'm more than willing to follow up. Even in my new role, nothing prevents me from following up and ensuring that in justifiable cases which are defined by law, where injury or loss happens and the law allows, then compensation can ensue.
So this evening you're telling Kenyans that the bereaved families will have to wait longer until the law is developed. And I'm not actually asking for specific families. These are public resources for purposes of accountability. Once again, how much was spent to settle the burial expenses?
I wouldn't know, because it's not, you know, there's no vote called burial expenses. There's no vote like that. So this is ex gratia support, not just for these cases, many other cases every day that the state deals with are done ex gratia within the security operations budget, and therefore it's not possible to pinpoint this amount was used for burial because of the lack of a specific vote line.
On the time frame for compensation?
What about?
What time can they wait? For how long can the law be developed?
I am not sure, but we will do our best to make sure that cases where we form consensus, national consensus that require compensation are onboarded, because even in the extreme and glaring cases of terrorism, I've told you, it has taken, I think now, quite a number of years since we enacted the Prevention of Terrorism Act to operationalize that section. So I'm hoping perhaps within the coming year, we can work with the new leadership in that ministry and other stakeholders in the normal way government works and process perhaps regulations of the operationalization of some of these issues. As to whether that can be expanded beyond terrorism-related incidents, that is a discussion again which we can open up to stakeholder input and have it dealt with.
It's clear, Mr. Deputy President, that the tag behind you, and my colleague Mheshimiwa Kapombe mentioned it when we mentioned that we were having this interview, is not a very rosy one. And one person in particular called you the butcher of Tharaka. I have two important questions I'd like to understand. Because President William Ruto addressed the nation on the night of June 25th when protesters breached Parliament. He told the nation that that was a treasonous act perpetrated by crooks and criminals. Do you believe that the young people killed by police during the protest were crooks and criminals and not young people trying to advocate for their rights?
The protests of June started as legitimate protests by peaceful Kenyans who were expressing their rights and opinions on certain issues that they felt that needed to be handled by government differently. In the course of those protests,